Nature has treated us to a lovely spring day. We know, of course, that it's not going to last. I can already see in the weather forecast that next week it's going to get rather dull and cloudy once again. But as I always say, when you get days like this, take full advantage of them, which is what we're going to do in today's video. We'll give you some March gardening hacks. We shall be taking a look at stronger seedlings, healthy soil, and vertical growing. I'd like to start the programme by thanking you for all of your lovely comments that you left us after our last video. And there's just a couple of three of them that I probably just need to address, because although they may have asked the question, there could be one or two of you that are wondering the same thing. Now, Clive was one of the people that asked me about watering. He said he bottom waters, and he still had a lot of with seeds dampening off. And he asked, how long do I leave them in the water bath? Do you know what? I can't tell you how long I leave them in there. I just know that once the vermiculite that we use changes colour, then I know that that tray has had enough water. But of course, equally, the larger the pot or tray that you're trying to water from the bottom, the longer it's going to take. It's going to take longer for the water to rise from there to there than it is from there to there. There are several reasons why dampening off can occur. It could be through stagnant air, it could be through poor drainage. Cool temperatures do not help the situation either. But I find the biggest cause of dampening off is over watering. So ask yourself, how often do you actually water your plants? They don't need to be popped into a water bath every day. In fact, when we sow our seeds, they get that bottom watering, they go down to the house, and that's it. They won't see any more water until they've germinated. The only difference to that is if we're trying to germinate something on our heat mats. And that's because, clearly, the heat will dry the soil out. And seeds do need water for germination. But whatever you do, don't go putting your young seedlings and bottom watering or even top watering them every day. They simply don't need it. These are some plants that Mrs. W pricked out so a week ago, is it?
Yes. Yeah, that's lettuce.
And these are some lettuce that we sowed. And you can see they haven't been watered for 2 or 3 days, but they're actually still quite moist. And that's a really good indicator. Your finger. Just put your finger on top of the soil. And if it's really dried out, then it's time to water them. You never want to let them completely dry out, but it's all right for them to go 2 or 3 days without any more water. A comment I had from Anthony was, do we keep seeds from one year to the next? Now, I don't know exactly which seeds you're talking about, but if you're talking about packets of seed, yes, in most cases, that seed should be viable for at least 2 or 3 years. There are exceptions to that. For us, it's parsnip. Always replace parsnip seed every year, no matter how much of it you've got left. For myself and Mrs. W, we replace our onion and shallot seed every single year. It's not absolutely necessary. Some people use the same seed, but what you will find is that the germination rate will just be going down and down and down for each year that you keep it. Onions are an integral piece of vegetable that myself and Mrs. W use. We use a lot of onions. It goes into most of the foods that we cook. So it's really important for us that when we sow our onions, they're there. I can't afford for those to be not germinating. I need to grow, in the space I grow, something like 400 onions. Remember, we don't just use them in the recipes that we make all of our own stocks. So, yeah, we do go through quite a few onions. Now, when it comes to the seeds that we save, if that's what you're talking about, we save our pea seeds, our bean seeds. Yes, they can last for quite some time, because what you never know was how long ago the seeds you buy went into that packet. I know they have certain dates on it, but you don't know if they did go in there then. You have no idea. Whereas the pea seeds that we save, well, some of the peas we sowed this year, they're now 2-3 years old now.
Yes.
Yeah. And they're still germinating fine. Absolutely fine. So when you save your own seed, you know when you saved it. So you can keep it that bit longer. Probably the most popular comment that I got over the last couple of videos is about pricking out. First of all, the first thing I need to say to you is that myself and Mrs. W do very, very little pricking out. You can see here that when I sow brassicas, I sow 2 seeds per cell, and if 2 germinate, I just terminate one of them, thin to the strongest seedling. So I don't sow very much that I have to prick out. You can see here with the onions, they're multi-sown, so they're in their cells. I don't need to prick them out. Whereas if you were growing your onions as single onions, you would have probably broadcast sowed them, and that means that you then need to prick those out. Now, I'm quite a lazy gardener, and if I can get away with doing some work, I will. However, there are times when you do need to sow seeds into a tray. It might be because you want to grow a lot of a variety, and it's much more economical to sow them into a tray and then prick them out. It may be that, like myself and Mrs. W, you can see here, we have some flowers. They've germinated really nicely, but it's better for us to sow them in this pot rather than to use up valuable space in our modules. We'd need a hell of a lot more modules and a hell of a lot more space to be able to keep them. Whereas this way, we can sow the seed, we can select the best seedlings from that and then prick them out. We're not going to need all those seeds. We simply don't need all those seedlings. So we can pick the strongest ones out. When it comes to pricking out, I would say 2 things. First, be confident. These seedlings, they're stronger than you think. They really are. And being handled is fine. And secondly, have everything ready. I've got my module tray here. I have my operational implements here. Dr. Wilson. These are just some examples of things that people can use to actually prick seedlings out. I'm sure some of you have other things, but this is a good selection. This is Mrs. W's favourite, the spoon.
Yeah, round-ended spoon, nice long handle.
So I'm going to start with the ones in the corner here and just sort of take this little bunch out here and then lay them onto there. So remove one of the seedlings, and you can see here I'm holding it by its leaf. As long as you do that, this little seedling is fine. Don't worry about if you've got a lot of soil on here. Really doesn't matter too much. But there is some controversy as to when you should actually prick out seedlings. For me, it's when they're large enough for me to handle. And this is large enough for me to handle. If you let them get much bigger, like you can see here, this is one of the brassicas, they're going to have a huge root on them, whereas this root only comes down to about here. You don't have to wind it around. And then all you need to do is to pre-make your hole as I have, drop that seedling in there, push him down, and close the soil up. And that's all there is to it. So let's get another. See, the soil's come off this one, look. That's really the sort of length of root that you want. You don't want much bigger than that. And then in she goes. And then just close the soil up around it. And you can see there that I've actually put that seedling right up to its first leaves. You don't need to leave it sticking up. That will be perfectly fine and will grow away nicely. And it's an old hack that we picked up, Mrs. W, when we first started growing, didn't we? Because sometimes our seedlings would become very, very leggy.
Leggy, yes. Yeah.
And you can always bury them a bit deeper.
Yes.
Just remember, always handle them by a leaf. If the leaf breaks, you can always grow a new leaf. But if the stem breaks, that's it. That plant can no longer survive. So there's no myth. Don't be frightened of it. Just go for it. If you broadcast sow your seed, there's lots in there. If you break the odd one because you've done it wrong, it really doesn't matter. What I would say is make sure that you use the correct size module or pot for the seedling that you are going to be pricking out. It's no good putting that seedling into this. Or even this. Because going back to Clive's question, if you prick them out into this, there's going to be an awful lot of water that will fill that compost. And again, the root can rot and you'll lose those seedlings. Far better, if you're going to be pricking out or potting things on, is to do that in stages. Don't go from that to that. I'm sure many of you, just like myself and Mrs. W, are passionate gardeners. But what if you don't have a full-size polytunnel or greenhouse? You may have one of these structures on your allotment, but it won't be heated. There will be no electricity up there. So it's not a lot of use to you to be starting off your seedlings. The VEVOR mini greenhouse, this could be the solution for you. It has a rust-proof frame and the waterproof cover creates a microclimate that will help your seedlings thrive, especially during the early part of the year. These shelves easily come out, and then you can use this during the summer months to actually grow your own warmth-loving plants. You can pop your tomatoes or your aubergines or your peppers or chili peppers into pots and just keep them in here where they will have all the warmth that they so enjoy. Setting the VEVOR mini greenhouse up was really easy thanks to the easy to follow instructions. You'll have your greenhouse up in no time, and There is no complicated processes. It's the ideal place to grow your young seedlings on, giving them the perfect environment for them to grow strong and healthy. It also allows them to get all of the light that the days are now offering, while shielding them from the harsh weather that could also come along during the early months of the year. For myself and Mrs. W, this is in an ideal location, right next to our patio doors that lead out onto the garden. All we have to do is to keep these in overnight while the temperatures are still low, and then bring them out here and pop them straight onto the shelf. So if you don't have a grow light setup, it's an ideal place to put them so that they don't become really leggy. And of course, for those of you that have an allotment, you'll be able to grow your seedlings on at home, caring for them the way that you want to care for them. Because all you've got to do is step outside your back door, put them in here, give them some water as and when they need it, and then take them back indoors during the evening when the temperatures turn that little bit cooler. When it comes to the winter season, when we see a lot more stormy weather, it's really easy just to take the cover off and then put it on again the following season. It's just held by these ties, and guide ropes are supplied with this. We're not using them in this instance because it's in a really protected place, and we have grandchildren that run around and we didn't want them to trip over those. So we've just put blocks on the corners and spread some wood chip over the top of the cover. So it's a really quick and easy thing to put up when you need it, but take down so that it's protected during the winter months. Whether you have a large garden space or a small garden space, the 4'6" by 4'6" by 6'6" VEVOR mini greenhouse is ideal for small spaces. And if you want to save money on your purchase of a VEVOR mini greenhouse, then check out our description where you'll find an exclusive discount code that's just for our viewers. So do click on that link and start growing today. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Mrs. W actually potted on our peppers, chili peppers and aubergines. And I did say to you that this year we would be experimenting because we wanted to ultimately make our own mix. And this is the mix we used. And it's 2 parts fertile fibre, 1 part leaf mould and 1 part perlite. And you can see here it's worked really well. really well. We're really pleased with it. And if anything else, it's made the fertile fibre compost go that much further, because obviously we've added other things to it. The perlite helps with the drainage. Also the fertile fibre does because it's coir based. And I'm looking to get a hold of some coir so that we can actually start using something actually maybe without the multi-purpose compost. I just thought I'd just tell you that and let you know what we've been doing. I shall actually make a whole video about it. We've already begun, but it will come out later on in the year once we have the results and our findings of what we've done. I've got mixes that I want to use our worm casts up on. So I want to try some different mixes, and then, as I say, we'll make a video and you'll be able to see exactly how we got on. If you do also make your own potting compost mixes, then do please let us know in the comments how you find it and how you got on. What's your recipe? The more we can share in the comments, then the more that we can all learn. Soil health is all important really when it comes to growing, well, anything, regardless whether it be vegetables or your flowers, the more healthier your soil is, the better crops you'll ultimately get. And these broad beans, for example, they have been here since mid-November. Looking really good. And I'm quite confident that we shall get the harvest from those. But, our plots are heavy clay, and when the winter rains used to come, it may surprise you that this used to actually, there'd be pools of water everywhere, wouldn't there, Mrs.
Would,
W?
yes, yeah. Really claggy stuff.
And so we were never actually able to grow the food that we do now in this particular garden that we now have. We could only grow crops during the summer months. That too also caused a few problems, but not as much as water pooling and laying over the soil. Anybody who gardens with clay soil will know that in the winter it gets really wet and claggy, and in the summer it does the complete opposite and gets really hard, and trying to get water to the plants and air is really quite difficult. And either with a hoe or the rake I'd try and pick away at the soil so that the poor plants could It used to be an absolute nightmare. It really did. But now when I look at the garden, I can see the purple sprouting broccoli, I can see the cauliflowers. I've got some more cauliflowers here that will come ready during May. Spring greens. There's actually still quite a lot to eat from this garden. And that's because the soil really is quite healthy. Being no dig, it's never disturbed, it's never turned over. All it wants to do is grow things. And of course, if you don't do something with your soil, that's exactly what it will do. It will grow things. Now, when I was spreading this compost earlier, I was pulling some weeds out. In fact, here is one. It's rather withered now. Well, I don't know what this weed is. Couldn't begin to tell you. But I can see it's got several flowers on it. And each one of those will make a seed head. And it will spread seeds all over your plots. And away it will go again, causing a nuisance within your plots. Also, weeds, you have to remember. Weeds are just a plant that's in the wrong place, that's all it is. Therefore, they will take nutrients from your soil, the water from the soil, which your precious plants need. Now, I did say right at the very end of 2024, I think it was on the very last video we made of 2024, that there would be a couple of structural changes to the No Dig Norfolk Gardener's veg garden. And that was the introduction of these pallet collar raised beds that we're going to be growing food in. But for some years now, there has been discord in the No Dig Norfolk Gardener's veg garden. As you're all aware of, Mrs. W loves her peas.
Definitely do.
And she really is not very pleased when I decide that those peas are coming off the arch and the beans are going there, because she can still see that there are flowers on there and there are still lots of peas. So, I want to restore harmony to the veg garden. I'm going to put another arch in the garden. And I thought it would be a really good time to film this, because one of the most questions I actually get asked in the comments is, how did you make the arch? Now, myself and Mrs. W did make a video on it, but as somebody pointed out, I omitted the actual lengths of everything. It was just a straightforward video of myself and Mrs. W making it. So I thought it'd be an ideal time to actually show you what it is. These green stakes are 2 meters tall. And obviously about a foot goes into the ground. To be able to do this job, you're going to need some kind of piece of string so that you can get the measurements correct. You're also going to need some cattle fencing, and this is 1 meter wide, so each of these are set at 1 meter in width so that we can attach the cattle fencing to this. You can see that we've already put 1 piece of blue piping in place. This piping is 25mm in width, and I bought a reel that was 25 meters long. And that's quite good for us because the measurement of this blue piping is 5 meters. And then lastly, you're going to need some cable ties, and that's to attach the cattle fencing to the blue piping. All of this job can be done by 1 person. It is much easier if there's 2 of you, especially when it comes to putting this blue piping on, because it needs to go down at the same rate on either side, and that's because it's been coiled up and it doesn't readily want to go into shape. First bit done. Now what we need to do is to get the galvanised cattle fencing, put it over the top, and then start to attach it with the cable ties. Now it's much easier if there's 2 of you to do this next bit of the job. However, if you're vertically challenged like Mrs. W, you will need somebody with some height.
You need a barry or a step ladder.
I knew there was a reason you were with me. It's my height.
Can you just reach your nose? Sounds familiar, Barry?
Yes.
I deliberately chose when we did our kitchen to not have any wall units because I can't reach them very well anyway.
Do you know I was then going to go on to say that? So now we have 2 arches in the garden. This one was the original one. I shall grow a few peas on it early season, but it will give me the chance to be able to take these peas off here when I want to, not when Mrs. W wants me to, and I can get our climbing French beans and runner beans over here. Also, I'll have the space this year to once again grow some lovely borlotti beans. Missed those over the last couple of years because I simply haven't had the room to fit them into the garden. But now Mrs. W can harvest her peas for as long as those plants want to keep producing. And also, it gives us the facility to leave some plants so that those peas can become the seed for the following season. It's the end of the day now, and those young seedlings that are pricked out right at the beginning of the video, taking those down to the house. Now when we next see you, it's going to be time to start getting some plants into the plots. And if you want to see exactly how we do that, and you're new to our channel, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and then you'll be notified whenever we upload a video. And if, like us, you wouldn't mind building yourself one of these arches, they work well in the plots, but they work equally as well between 2 raised beds, and you can have the same effect. You have more growing space over and you don't take up so much of the space in your raised beds, or in our case, in the plots. But if you want to see the full video of how we made that, then watch this video next. Have a great gardening week, and we shall see you on the next one.